Age, you can inform Rashmi ma'am to join. Vidya here.
Yes, Vidya ma'am,
Yeah.
I spoke to
Yeah.
Raj ma'am. Ma'am said she'll be joining, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I just called her before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vidya ma'am, shall I ask one more time?
Yeah, Tej.
Vidya ma'am, shall I ask Raj ma'am? Shall I remind
Yeah,
her?
just check with her. No. The YouTube link has also been posted.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can tell your students also to join.
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Vidya ma'am, Raj ma'am has joined.
Tej,
Yes, ma'am.
all well?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be starting.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Tej, are you waiting for somebody or we can start the
No, ma'am.
session?
Raj ma'am has joined. Shall I start, ma'am?
Yeah, you can start. I hope you have given to your students also the link.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The YouTube link is shared to the students, ma'am.
Hope they are watching it. Okay, Tej, then we can start.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah.
A very good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, I extend a very warm welcome to our Principal Ma'am, Dr. Sunita, and Vice Principal Ma'am, Dr. Rashri, and the speaker of the session, Dr. Upasana Roy Burman, my colleagues, and all my dear students, for today's guest lecture on the topic India and Middle East relations under Prime Minister Modi. Okay, so let us try to understand through Dr. Upasana the importance of India and Middle East relations, and especially Prime Minister Modi's Look West policy, and how India is pursuing a very balanced approach with regard to the foreign policy. Okay, so before we start the session, I request Vice Principal Ma'am Dr. Rashmi to take the welcome remarks. Rashmi ma'am.
I think she again dropped Tej. Probably she'll be joining in a minute.
Oh, shall we wait now, Raj ma'am, to give the welcome note? Ma'am has joined.
Just 1 minute. We'll wait for her.
Yes, ma'am.
She's joining back.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
All right. Welcome, one and all.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
One and all. To the lecture on India in Middle East relations under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I congratulate Mrs. Tejasvi of Department of Political Science for taking this initiative to get lecture this afternoon. Interesting indeed. I thank and welcome the Government Head Department of Political Science. It's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. I thank all the participants for joining in and also the ICT team of our college for supporting this guest lecture. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj ma'am. Thank you so much, Rashmi ma'am. Okay. So I take this great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Dr. Upasana Roy Barman, who is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Serampur Girls College, West Bengal. Dr. Upasana did her MA, MPhil and PhD from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, West Bengal. Her area of specialization is international relations and Indian politics. Madam has also worked as an assistant professor in the University of Calcutta, and at present she is also a member of West Bengal Political Science Association. Adding to her credit, Madam has presented many papers in national and international seminars and in conferences. So the list goes on actually with all her academic achievements. So without any further delay, I request Dr. Upasana to take over the session. Over to you, Upasana.
Thank you, Tejaswani. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Tejaswani. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I thank everyone, every colleague, every students of your department for giving me this opportunity to take my perception, to give my perception on India's foreign policy in case of Middle East under Prime Minister Modi. So, can I start with the webinar?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just make this webinar a more informal thing. I don't want the students to just jot down whatever I am stating point by point. No, you don't need to. Google Kumar is there for us. Google is going to help us a lot with those jargons of information, statistical information regarding what India is doing, what sort of trade agreement India is conducting with other countries of Middle East. But I want to take a different perception of understanding this Middle East policy of Narendra Modi. Okay. So before I start that, you have to understand that I have thought that I will divide this lecture into certain parts. First, a very brief understanding of what is foreign policy. Next, the determinants of foreign policy, where I will be speaking about the very domestic politics and the international structure. And the international structure will be my primary area of focus, because you have to understand that the international structure is one of the very important factors that affects the foreign policy of different states at different point of time. Okay, so and by understanding that international structure, we will be cultivating the foreign policy that India is having with Middle East under Modi. Okay, so the first part, as Norman Hill says, foreign policy is the substance of nation's effort to promote its interest via other nations. In simple terms, foreign policy is basically the policy that a state undertakes in order to have its relationship with other states in order to protect or promote its national interest. So whenever you talk about foreign policy, you have to remember that the foreign policy crosses the boundary of the state. And it is always in relation to something outside the boundary of the state. Okay, something very basic thing of foreign policy. Okay, and one of the primordial reasons for conducting foreign policy is to protect the national interest of the state. This is a very basic. Okay, that this foreign policy gets determined by very different factors, like for example geography, like for example human resources, the culture of the country, domestic politics, and international politics. There are other factors along with that. Okay, for example, in case of geography, America was able to have its separatist policy in case of World War II because, am I audible? Hello? Tejaswini, can I continue with it?
Yes, Upasana, you can continue.
Okay, yeah. So as I was saying, see, in case of geography, a very small example. America was able to have its separatist policy in case of World War II because of its geographical location, because it is very far from Europe. If America was very close to Europe, I doubt whether America would have been able to have such sort of separatist policy in case of World War. Okay, so geography is a very important factor in case of one policy. Now, there are two things that I'm going to harp in case of this seminar. One is domestic politics, not much, but the more focus on international politics. Okay. Now, in case of domestic politics, you have to remember that foreign policy always get influenced by what is happening within the state. Okay, by what is happening in within the state. But the one who is conducting the foreign policy, the one who is drawing up the foreign policy, also have to keep into consideration what is happening within the state. That influences in the making of the foreign policy. Okay, and it is here that I make a very small comparative study between the foreign policy taken by Manmohan Singh and Narendra. Okay, very small thing, very small example. It's very interesting. If you see the statistics of the election of 2004, 2009, in comparison with the statistics of the election of 2014 and 2019, there's a very large difference. In case of 2004, when the UPA government got its majority in the center, the UPA government got 208 votes, out of which the Congress share was 145, which is 69%. In 2009, the UPA government formed the government at the center with 262 votes, where the Congress share was 206, which is 78%. Now coming back to 2014, when the India formed the government, its vote share was 336, where the BJP share was 282, which is 83%. In case of 2019, the vote share was 353, out of which 302 was BJP share, which is around 85%. What is important is that you have to remember in 2004 or 2014, it was not Congress, it was not BJP, but it was UPA and NDA. So it was a coalition politics which was running over there. And since the vote share of Congress within UPA was less than the vote share of the BJP within NDA, so the pressure of coalition politics differed in case of UPA and in case of NDA. In simple terms, even if Manmohan Singh wanted to have a transparent policies with other states, even in case of Middle East, Manmohan Singh was not able to do that because of the pressure of the coalition politics. And that was more because UPA share, because within that UPA government, Congress share was not that much. That Congress could have taken that risk. But when you come to when we come to Narendra Modi, that picture changes. Because in case of Narendra Modi, the BJP share within the NDA was much higher, and the BJP could take that risk, even if they had a coalition. And that is one of the reasons because of which there was a statement. I don't remember the person who gave the statement, who stated that under Manmohan Singh, India-Israel relationship was something like a mistress, whom you can love in private, but you cannot claim in public. But under Modi, India-Israel relation was more open and more. Is there a problem, Tejaswini?
No, Fasla, you can continue.
Okay. Now, this is an example of the domestic politics I have stated. And this is the sole reason, one of the very important reasons because of which Modi was able to take a more hawkish or more strong and open and transparent foreign policy rather than Manmohan Singh, because of the coalition politics pressure that was under. This is something, an example of domestic politics that I can state. Okay. Now, the thing that I am harping on is the structure of the international politics. Okay. Now, when we read IR, there's a very important theoretical parameter that we go in, that we study in IR, that is realism. Okay. And there are various parts of realism, new realism, structured realism, Joseph Greco realism. You have Meschmeyer's idea, offensive, defensive realism. So there's a part called structural realism. Okay. Kenneth Walsh is one of the co-founders. What does structural realism states? A realism is basically a way of understanding international politics, where they take into consideration the power politics that plays in the international arena or within the state as the unit of analyzing the state activity. Okay, this is the very basic idea. So within that very larger idea of realism, there's a part called structural realism, where whose profounder is Kenneth Walsh. Okay, what does Kenneth Walsh state? Walsh states that when you understand the activity of the state, you have to take into consideration the international politics that is going on. Okay, it is many a times state forms their policy in respect to the international politics that is there. Okay, one example I will give. Okay, first example, then I will go into India's Middle East, and there I will relate the very structural aspect and how India formed its policy in the Middle East. Okay, structure. I want to say the international structure. Okay, and another thing that I have to say that Walsh stated it that the international structure is anarchy. Okay, and let's not go into that, but very important thing is that the international structure always emphasized or always formulate or always influence the policy that the state undertakes. Okay, 1970. I'm taking you all guys back to 1970. Okay, one of the very important policy that India formed in 1970 was India-USSR Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation. Okay, I will not say that Indira Gandhi was not in favor of social. Indira Gandhi was in favor of socialism because of which she took that policy. No, I'm not going into that argument. Okay, what I'm saying is that you have to understand why India made that agreement with USSR, being one of the founder of NAFTA. Okay, because India at that time was facing a definite international pressure of a trio of Pakistan, China, and United States of America. India knew that this is the international position. This is something that is harboring out there. Okay, this is something that I have to face. This is a pressure that I have to face. And in order to counter that pressure, India made its agreement with USSR. It wasn't India's own internal politics or domestic politics that forced or that made India to go into an agreement with Soviet Union, but rather Rather, it was the international politics of the pressure of the tribe, because by that time India was having a very bad relationship with America, sorry, with China and Pakistan. So both of them were enemy of India. And the support of a global powerful world power like United States of America, India was gone. Okay, so India needed to balance it up. And because of that, India had an agreement with Soviet. This is one of the very important truths. So it was the international politics that fostered or that made India to go into such sort of foreign policy. There are numerous examples out there of different other things. Okay, this is the numerous examples out there. If you, yeah, if you have read the European history, then you should be knowing that Britain and France had a very bad relationship for a very throughout century. 10 years, 20 years. But it was the Second World War and the pressure of the Axis power that even made Britain and France to have a more friendly agreement. Okay, so many a time international politics is the determining factor, is a factor which determines the foreign policy of the state. This is the very example that I am stating. Okay. Now, when I give that example, now I will take you guys with what is uh, happening in case of Middle East. Okay. Now, first point is that why India is taking a stand, what sort of, or the first thing that the structure, because before going into the structure, why India is taking an initiative in Middle East. Okay. Now, Middle East relationship with India is a very long-term relationship, and I will not go into that. I will just focus on Middle East. Okay. Now, under Modi, there were two very important domestic decisions that India. One was the abrogation of Article 370, and one other was CA. Okay. Now, both these things, abrogation of Article 370 and CAA, is very important because the community which it is one of the majority who dominates the Middle East. Okay, this is something like that. Middle East doesn't mean only Israel. There are other countries over there, Middle East, who are important to India. Okay, now this is important. Okay, now India, if you see policy, even in the domestic politics, is more of a very hardcore policy. Okay, it's more of a pertinent standpoint. Okay. But he is very transparent and he's very specific about what is going on. Okay. Now, India realized one thing again. Okay, that if you go on cultivating the very issue of Israel and Palestine conflict, okay, that will be a very important pressure on India's country. Okay. Now, India, there are three things. India have to make sure that the Middle East gives India a support, or it is silent against India in the international organization, in the international platform on the issue of Article 370 and CA. One thing. Another thing India realized that if it cultivates the Israel-Palestine relationship, that is something India realizing under, then that will be a pressure on India's domestic politics, and that will be a pressure on formulation of India's politics. Why domestic politics? Because if Palestine, Israel country, India takes any position, any definite standpoint in case of Israel-Palestine conflict, that will be an effect on the population that India has. Okay, on the content of on the very composition of the population that India has. India cannot. Now, under Modi, India did a very good. I will quote here what India did. B. Bala Bhaskar, a joint secretary of Indian Foreign Minister, he stated that we have dehyphenated our relation with Palestine and Israel. And now we see them both mutually independent and exclusive as a part of this policy. The Prime Minister is undertaking this visit. Okay. Earlier, India decided, or you can say that earlier India used to say that if Jerusalem can be a part of Israel or not. So India was in a very flux. Now India is very specific of what it said. India took a very balanced stand in case of Middle East and cited itself out from the Israel-Palestine conflict. It earlier used to say that if Jerusalem as a future capital of Palestine, but now it has shifted from the idea of sovereign idea and state that the idea of a sovereign Palestine coexisting peacefully with Israel. So India is very clear about this under that we are not in support of Palestine, we are not in support of Israel. We are stating that you can go for a peaceful solution with the state of Palestine living peacefully with Israel. Okay, this is what is an example of that. India was one of the person of the one of the person who voted against Trump's stand in 2017 of shifting the embassy to Jerusalem. Okay, Trump in 2017, in order to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, he shifted the embassy and he took that issue into the US. India was one of the countries who didn't support it. That. On the other hand, India was also one of the countries who supported Israel at the UN ECOSOC to deny observer status to Palestine human rights organization Shahid. If you follow the visit of Narendra Modi in 2017, Modi visited Israel. What the observer knows is that unlike other dignitaries, he didn't travel to Ramallah to meet the Palestinian leader. Rather, he visited Palestine separately in 2018. Okay, so he made it a point by stating that Palestine and Israel are not something we are really concerned with. Because you have to understand that when you knock into the internal politics of another state, here you are going to have the clash. Because they are not going to leave you in doing what you in not going to leave you without interfering into things that you are doing within you. India needed to balance that. That's a very short reason because of which I have stated Article 3. Okay, and this is one of the reasons because of which Israel stated that abrogation of Article 370 is an internal matter of India. We are not concerned with, and Palestine was muted. Okay, so you have to understand that India realized the very structural politics that will happen if India interfere into Israel-Palestine. And that's the very sole reason that India took into consideration that this conflict is going to happen. Let them face their, let them deal with their own conflict. We are going to take only this. Or else that international pressure is going to affect. Okay. Now the next point I'm going to next point is UAE. Okay, now UAE is a very important part because around 2.8 to 3 million Indians works over there. Okay, and Delhi want to make sure that the workers are insulated and they are protected. Okay, so because of that, India has maintained also a very good relationship with UAE. Rather than focusing itself only on a buyer and seller relationship, India has got into comprehensive strategic relationship with UAE. If you follow the Modi's visit to UAE and the, in fact, he was given, he received the Order of Zaid, the high civilian decoration conferred by the UAE government. And he stated, I feel very honored to receive this highest civil honor. Okay, it is our testimony to growing partnership, and it is also an honor for the entire Indian nation of 1.3 billion people out there. Okay, so Modi also maintained a very good relationship with UAE because this large percentage of Indians who work over there, they bring a good amount of foreign resources to India. And India doesn't want to interfere with that. India wants that. Okay, India wants that. India, in order to have that, India needs to have the good relationship with the host country. And because of that, India moved away from a very buyer and seller relationship to more a strategic relationship, to a more economic relation, to more investment relationship with UAE. Okay. This is also one of the reasons because of which UAE also was almost muted, and in fact UAE also didn't took a very strong stand against India in case of abrogation of treaty. No, UAE isn't. And remember, UAE is also a country which who have a very large number of Muslims. This is a third. Now, this is a second point. Now the third one. Tejaswini, am I audible? It's everything is I don't know.
Yes,
If,
Hasna,
are
you're
you
audible.
able to hear?
Yeah,
Oh,
I can.
now. Okay. Another third point. Another third point, and because before stating that third point, I want to say that Mohammed bin, his name is Mohammed bin Salman, I guess, is the Prince of Saudi. Okay, to India. Okay, and at the time he was involved into a case of a murder of a Saudi journalist, and Modi was there, but Modi received him very gladly, and in fact he hugged him. He has this special hug policy, and he hugged him up and he invited him into in our room. Okay, international politics was very against that. Okay, but Modi didn't give a damn because even Modi knew that after a point of time they will stop parties. Okay, that is something about Modi. He is very straightforward in what he is saying. I feel about the coalition politics, the domestic politics, and because of that strength, Modi is able to take a very strong and risky stand even in case of foreign politics. Okay, now Modi, when in an interview of Mohammed bin Salman, he stated that Saudi is not only going to invest only in case of petroleum. That's what he stated is that this petroleum dollar politics he is going to move Saudi away from that and more into manufacturing and investment. Okay, but Saudi is one of the country who dominate the GCC. Okay, the Gulf countries organization. Okay, now uh, along with that, the Gulf countries are at present not only involved into this crude oil trade. Okay, they were they want to expand their trade, infrastructures development, port facilities. In fact, they have diversified their investment into areas like renewable energy, smart cities, technological innovation, and there's a very new idea that is coming up in the Saudi. This is called Khalji capitalism. Okay, Khalji capitalism is basically a group of people, or you can say a class or a new conglomeration of a capitalist class in the Middle East who express the tendency of circulation of capital at the regional level. Okay, at the regional, the national level, not at the international level. Okay, and they are a very important financial, they're emerging as a very important financial bloc in Middle East. Okay, along with that, another important thing is that UAE at present chair the Indian Ocean Rim Association, and it wants to build infrastructure in terms of port, military facilities with India. Now, why I am stating this? Okay, this diversified stand of Gulf is very important for India, and mainly in case of Indian Ocean. Okay, what I have stated, UAE is now chairing Indian Ocean Rim Association. I've been chairing. Okay. Now, so this Gulf countries diversification has made India realize that if these Gulf countries are ready to diversify their trade agreement out of that petroleum and parallel politics, okay, then we should also have policies with it. Why? Because these countries will be a major force for India in order to safeguard Indian Ocean. Okay, see, think about the map of India. India is surrounded by Indian Ocean. Okay, and even if you say it's Indian Ocean, that doesn't belong to India. Even if India tries to make it a part of India, okay, that's a hilarious activity that many a time India does. Okay, now even if this Indian Ocean that surrounds India is a very important part. Why is it so important? Let me go for a very small statistical step. 95% trade in volume come via Indian Ocean. Not only that, 68% of trade in capital comes via Indian Ocean. Along with that, 80% of the crude oil requirement, deep sea mining for mineral resources takes place in Indian Ocean. If India needs to protect this Indian Ocean, India is doing two things. One is India is going for a very comprehensive, very open, very supportive Buddhist policy that India had that Buddhist policy, but it's taking a very different. That's a very different step. Along with that, India is also trying to have the support of the Middle Eastern countries who are ready to diversify their trade in order to secure the strategically important Indian Ocean. Got it? See, you have to really understand one. India doesn't have that. Okay. Even in one of the study, I remember that Saudi Arab was ready to make a huge amount of investment in India, but India didn't agree to that because India didn't have the capability to nurture that, to take that amount of investment. Which brings us to chain idea that even if you go on feeding a person, it doesn't make any sense until and unless that person have the capability to take that. Okay, if you have sugar and if I keep on feeding you sweets, that doesn't make you any good to you because you do not have the capability to have that. Okay, so India doesn't have that enough capability to bring or to develop a huge strategic or a huge strategical development or a huge amount of military development in case of Indian Ocean. India needs the support of Pakistan. Another important reason is that China is going for a strategy called string of pearl strategy, by which it will build ports and military establishment, and it is shifting its naval capacity towards the Indian Ocean. If you remember, in 2017, China built its first offshore military base in Djibouti, which will provide it as a base to monitor Indian Navy operation in the Indian Ocean. India needs to balance, and India, in order to balance that, India needs the support of the Gulf. And that is one of the reasons that India is having a good relationship with almost all of the Gulf countries, or all of the neighbors of GCC. Okay, like for example, India and Saudi are emerging in a very important relation. They had a naval exercise. They are supposedly going to have a naval exercise in 2021. Modi visited over there, and India-Saudi relationship revolves around issues like trade and investment, defense and security cooperation. It is also emerging as a global manufacturing hub. In case of other countries like Bahrain, in Modi has been also given the title of King Hamad Order of the Renaissance by Bahrain King, and India is also evolving its relationship with Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, other members of the GCC countries, and in fact, Sushma Swaraj, if you remember, Sushma Swaraj in a meeting in 2015 in New York pushed for the idea of GCC India Free Trade Agreement. And she also stated that Gulf was an extended part of our India's neighborhood. Gulf, listen what I'm saying. Gulf is an extended part of our neighborhood. The India is taking Gulf as a part of its neighborhood. And if it is a part of its neighborhood, it is also the responsibility of the neighbor to protect the another person who is beside your country. Okay, so India is taking a very good stand with the countries of GCC. If you go for the statistics, a very small statistic, because I don't want to go for the statistic. I know Google is there. Darling, Google is there. We all do that. Okay. Now, 2017, nearly 7% increase. If you see in the statistics of 2017, India and GCC trade was 104 billion US dollar. At that time, India ASEAN trade was $81 billion and India EU trade was $102 billion. So India's trade with GCC countries is much higher than even with ASEAN and with EU. Okay. Now, here I want to state that along with the GCC countries, India is also developing its relationship along with the other GCC countries. When I come to structural issue, India is also having a good trying to develop a good relationship with Iran. Now, there are certain problems. Like for the example, recently there was a problem involving a railway line. A railway project was a bilateral agreement signed between Prime Minister Modi visit to Tehran in 2016 between India, Afghanistan, and Iran, which permitted India to build an alternative trade route to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Indian Railway Construction Limited was to take up this project for financing of around 1.6 US billion dollars. But later on, what happened is that India was outstated from that project involving the construction line from Chabahar Port to Zahidi. Okay, now this Chabahar Port, in case of India-Iran relation, this port is very important because port is crucial infrastructure on the Gulf of Oman, which it will give India partial route to ship its goods to Central Asia, Eurasia, and Middle East. Along with that, it is also accounted with the port which in Pakistan and China is building, known as Gwadar Port, and it will also help India to keep a monitor over the port built by Pakistan and China. Got it? Along with that, India is also trying to have a good relationship with Oman because India needs natural gas. India needs oil. And this natural gas pipeline between Oman and Iran will also help India to import natural gas at a much cheaper. Okay. In fact, it was so Iran is so important that even after US sanction, India tried to foster its relationship with Iran in other sectors. I mean, India was able to master the several sectors out of this US sanction in order to foster its relationship with Iran. But then Iran has its own politics. Okay, so Iran, many a time, Iran is in support of India. Like for example, in case of Article 370, Iran was one of the countries who opposed it, who stated that anti-Muslim case, who stated it that India was abrogating its own idea of secularism. India was against the very idea. India was against this very concept of human rights. But it was very silent in UN and it didn't talk the issue of Kashmir or the application of Article 370. Okay, see, now this international structure of US sanctions determine the relationship between India and Iran. Okay, but India is very eager to have this relationship with Iran because the port is a very crucial infrastructure for India's navigation, for India's development. Okay, and India's strategic against China. Got it? I'm just Middle East is a very larger section. Okay, so I'm just trying to make a smaller part of it. Okay. Another reason, because of, I will end with a bit of studying India-Israel relationship and CA plan, which is making a divide within the Middle East. But the last point of structure is China. Now, if you understand the very geographical position of China, not the position, the geographical resources of China, you will find that China has a scarcity of oil in relation to the development that takes place in China. Okay, not only oil, also natural gas. Okay, in relation to the development that takes place in China, the amount of oil natural gas that China has, it is not enough. for China. And that is one of the reasons that China is very much dependent on the Arab oil producer countries. That is along with that, the trade and the sea link of Asia to Europe and Africa and Middle East is very important belt. It's very important belt, and because of that, the Belt and Road Initiative was put by China in order to use this part for the trade route of China. Okay, in 2016, China had this paper known as Arab Policy Paper. Okay, and this talked about how China is trying to foster its relationship with Middle East. China also acted as a mediation between Yemen and Syria. And in 2019, China was also trying to have a maritime security operation in the Strait. It was also there in the joint naval work of Oman and Iran. Okay, China's position in Middle East is a pressure on India. And India also wants to secure its own position in Middle East. Because if China gets into the full market of Middle East, then India will be one of the countries who will face that threat. This China has this very policy. If you see the way China occupies any area, they have this very interesting point. They enter in very small number. They go on increasing. They go on increasing. They go on spreading out. They acquire the whole area. That's a very same policy they use in case of China. Now, what does China have? China have the capacity to invest. They have the capacity to build infrastructure, provide public services, which is drawing the interest of Middle East. Because I have stated earlier only that Middle East is no longer a region which is only believing into petroleum dollar trade. It wants to diversify its trade. Okay. And in order to do that, China is a very important investment of India also wants to secure its position in the Gulf. That's a very simple thing. One of the very difference between Modi and Manmohan Singh was that Manmohan Singh failed to make a very strong India and Middle East policy because his relationship with Middle East was more of a summit related relationship. But if you follow Modi's relationship with Middle East, he was the person who visited each and every country individually. It didn't do Gulf, GCC or OIC as the platform to mediate his relationship with Middle East. Rather, he visited each and every country individually in order to foster his relationship. That was the sole reason because of which in OIC, in after 50 years, India was invited as a guest of honor. Sushma Swaraj gave a Sanskrit speech out there. I think. That is one of the sole reasons because of which other countries, along with Palestine, wanted India to be a mediator in its talk between Israel, Palestine. Okay. Even if you see the relationship with Bahrain, with Oman, with Kuwait, they are all individually related to Iran, India. And India wants this individual relationship because India wants to develop its own presence in each and every state of it in order to counter the China's growing influence. Okay. China needed oil. China needs that oil. For that, China is dependent on. Okay. But China also has something that Middle East doesn't. That is the power to invest in the manufacturing. Okay. To give them the technological innovation, to give them the foster, to give them the platform to diversify. That is it. Another example I can give, South Korea in many cases are against China. Okay, in many cases they're against China. In many cases they're against the very policies of China, very human rights activities that China undertakes. Very wrong human rights issues that China is. But you know why South is not able to strongly oppose China? Because 85 to 80% of South Korean economy is dependent on China. Most of the items that South Korea have, around 80% of its items are imported from China. And it's an import-export relationship that it has. Its economy is very much dependent on China. Because of that, South Korea is is not able to stand against India. Okay, so this China factor is a very important thing, and because of which India is trying to foster its relationship with America. Okay, and I have stated that unlike Manmohan, Modi doesn't go for summit relationship to foster it. Even if he goes for summit relationship, in case of Israel, it did. The first meeting was in the summit. Later on, he individually visited. Okay. Now, in this with the Israel part, India is having very good relationship with Israel at present. Um, India has this 2.6 billion naval surface air missile arms deal. Along with that, Sushma Swaraj was one of the person who blocked the opposition demand in Rajya Sabha for the passage of the resolution condemning Israel in 2014 for bombing the Gaza. She stated that since India has a friendly relationship with Israel and Palestine, both of this country, so India doesn't need to get things internet. Okay, and India has also, as I stated, hyphenated its stand with Israel, and India has also developed many sectors. In fact, India is also going for agriculture and manufacturing sector develop relationship with Israel. Okay. In case of Iraq, you can say that India is developing a good relationship, trying to develop a good relationship. In 2013, the head of Kurdistan political party called for a deep hope of political economic ties with India, and Indian called for Indian investors to invest over there. And is also trying to have a good relationship over there. So let's just hope it works good. So, since it's a very long, since it's very large India, okay, I have just harped on very important issues that you need to see in order to understand Modi's foreign policy in case of Middle East. As I have stated, that understanding India and Israel did have relationship, but because of the coalition politics, because of the pressure of the parties. In fact, Prakash Kar was one of the persons who was pressurizing India to outside his relationship or to come out of his relationship with India Israel. And because of that, in one of the people, I think Hindustan Times, they stated that India is having a mistrust relationship with Israel, who can be loved in the private but cannot be stated in the public under Manmohan. But in case of Modi, India is very open in its relationship. Israel is also an important country in case with India. If you see the history, then you will see that after the fall of Soviet Union, Israel was one of the countries who supplied arms. Even when India was US put a sanction on India, Israel also supplied arms and ammunition to India. That might be not much publicly, but in a private. Okay. Israel is very open in its relationship and very transparent in its relationship. Okay. Now, so to sum up this whole issue, I want to state that this structure, this international structure, is a very important factor that are controlled in this foreign policy. Um, Seriously, can I continue? I'm just in the end of
Yes,
the
Upasana, yes, you're audible.
So what I want to sum up is that whenever you have to understand foreign policy, you have to understand it not only in terms of the treaties and agreement they have done, but you have to understand that what makes this foreign policy happen. Okay, what factor made this foreign policy in this fashion? For Modi, foreign policy with India and Middle East is different really from the policy that India have with Middle East under Manmohan. Even in case of Vajpayee, I want to say just very small thing. Even in case of Vajpayee, he was also very strong in his foreign policy. In fact, he was also very transparent in case of India's Middle East policy. And let me not go into that discussion. So that's another part that I need to deal with. Okay, because Vajpayee has this bureaucracy. Vajpayee has this very domination of bureaucracy. Okay, and many times it is stated that much of his foreign policies were not taken by him, but Rajesh. Okay, and that is a controversial thing that I'm not going to take. But India under Modi is trying to have a very strong foreign policy with Middle East because of investment, because of the money that they have, because of natural gas, oil, and because of the diversification of trade that the Middle East is going for, mainly the GCC. Okay, and this relationship is so good. This relationship is so good that no, but this relationship is so good that none of the country was very focused in case in international politics when India abrogated Article 3. Here I want to say something very small. When the abrogation of Article 370 happened, at present you can find a division. Countries like Turkey, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they are the ones who are against this application of Article 370 and more on against the CA. But none of these countries of the Middle East, they are speaking anything against. What is stated is that this is internal matter of India. What very good. What Iran stated that India should solve its issue. That yes, India, this is something against the community. India should solve this issue. But none of the countries, even Saudi, none of the countries was there in the international platform criticizing India what India did. Even in CAA articles, they said that this is internal matter. And Modi did it very rightly because whatever he did, it was within the constitutional parameters. He did it within the constitution. That is something he used this. But countries like Turkey, they say that see, Turkey is a country who wanted to have that position of the new Ottoman, the protection of the Muslim Ummah. So Turkey want to have that position of the highest authority in the Muslim Ummah. And so it protested against it. In fact, its protest was very right. Okay. Even Malaysia. Even Malaysia stated that what's the reason of such a policy where people are dying? And it was very right. Okay. Even within the Arab countries, even within not the Arab, sorry, even within the Muslim countries, we find a division. Okay. And this division is because they're counting pennies. They're counting pennies. At this point of time, pennies is important. They're counting pennies. Life doesn't need much. That's very important. Okay. Marx was right in something, stating something that this economy that it is, this economy that determines everything. Okay, there's an economy that determines everything because of which United States of America was one of the countries who in 2000, in 2001 and 2, who made the point that Narendra Modi, as a chief minister of Gujarat, should not enter United States of America. It is the United States of America who is having a very good policy with India at this point. Okay. It is the Saudi who earlier, during the Babri Masjid riot, criticized India, who made it a point that India should be isolated in the international. It is the same Saudi at present was taking a neutral stance and stated that abrogation of the Article 370 is an internal matter of India, and I have faith in India that it will solve its problem. The foreign policy changes with time, changes with the international market, changes with the positioning of India, changes with the states that's okay. So it's a very complex thing. You cannot go on with the foreign policy on the basis of this happened, this agreement. You have to understand why this agreement, why the country was against India. At that point, at this point, supporting. The Saudi has came up with this very idea of it. I think that this is something that if you guys want, then I will share a write-up of it with you so that you can have an understanding of what I have talked, what I've discussed in this. And this money, I think I'm finished. Seriously, can you hear me? Tejaswini, can you hear me?
Personally, you're done?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Upasana, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm sure that our students have benefited from your lecture and got clear understanding of India's foreign policy towards Middle Eastern states. Thank you so much, Upasana.
Thank
I now request T. Nikita of BA EPP final year to propose the vote of thanks. Yes, Nikita. Yeah, Nikita, start.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Nikita.
Yes, ma'am. If time is money, then today you have spent millions for us, ma'am. On behalf of Kasturba Gandhi Degree College for Women, I regard it as an honor and privilege to extend a vote of thanks on this momentous occasion. I extend my hearty gratitude to the chief guest, Dr. Upasana Roy Burman, ma'am, who gave a vital time from our busy schedule and sharing her knowledge on the most debated topic. It gave deep insights into the topic and revealed some interesting facts too. I especially like some points such as how neighborhood policy of India has been extended to the Gulf too. As ma'am said, Gulf is also an extended part of India's neighborhood. And also how strong relationships with the Gulf in categories of diversification of state and in relation to the oil and natural gas. And also the point which ma'am mentioned, like Chabahar port, how its strategic importance too, and India's Indian Ocean strategic importance in terms of trade too, ma'am. I'm pretty sure the precious knowledge that you gave us will definitely help in our studies too, ma'am. I'm very grateful to our principal, Dr. Sunita, ma'am, and also Vice Principal, Dr. Rajshri, ma'am, for encouraging and supporting us in organizing this event. A special mention to our ICT team, Ms. Mangavani, ma'am, Ms. Sunanda, ma'am, and Ms. Vidyalakshmi, ma'am, who have worked to execute this webinar successfully, as this event cannot happen overnight, as it requires a lot of planning. Further, a big thanks for the master of this webinar, Ms. Tejaswini ma'am, for her endless efforts in organizing this webinar to make us enlightened about a most debated topic. Last but not least, thanks to all the participants for attending this webinar and making this event a grand success. Once again, I would like to state that we are glad to have you with us, ma'am. It has remained a pleasure. This event was not successful without your invaluable contribution. Thank you all. Have a happy day ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nikita.
Tejaswini, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Pasna. Thank you for giving your time. Yeah. Vidyalakshmi, Surendra ma'am.
Yes, Tej?
Ma'am, can we log out, ma'am? Can we sign out now?
Yeah. No, if it is done with, you want to share that form, you can just share that attendance form icon
Okay,
and then
ma'am.
stop it.
I can, ma'am. Shall I share it in the group, ma'am?
Yeah, it's your choice. It's your choice, Tej. It's your choice.
Okay,
You
ma'am.
can,
I'll share that with the students, ma'am, in the group, ma'am. Okay.
Tejaswini,
no problem.
can you share it up with me also, this link, this YouTube link?
Yeah,
of
sure.
this
I'll
web?
do that last time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you.
Tej, just, yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sunanda, ma'am.
You can end this meeting, Tej. After you're done with that, no, you can just say end meeting.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I can see, ma'am. Okay.
One second.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sunanda, ma'am. Okay. Thank you all. Okay. I'm going to end the meeting now.